So we've all got a good purpose, good reason to be here. So let's jump into it and let's start talking about some of the skills. But before we do, what we need to do is create a bit of a basis for memory and why our memory sometimes fails us, why there's stress and something that takes over. And the way we do this by understanding the three parts of memory. Now, who was able to watch that YouTube video that I sent out? You watched that? Excellent. Were you able to see that? Did you come to that seminar?
No.
You might have been there anyway. But who's seen me do the 20 items?
Yes.
So I do 20 items and then record them. Okay, so that's a little skill that sometimes wows people. I remember seeing that for the first time when I was about 14 and I was wowed by it. And I decided, from seeing that, well, I want to work on my memory. If this person, who's a fairly ordinary person, can do it, then I can do it. And the truth is that we all can. You've got an incredible, incredible brain. And if we train it, teach it what to do, use repetition of behaviour, paced repetition we'll talk about today. If we use those skills, we can actually get our memory to work at a higher functional level. But in order to do that, we need to understand the three components. And that is the first one, just a quick recap on the video. The first one we had was preparation. We've got to prepare. So we need to prepare. And I spoke about a number of things like, for example, regression. I spoke about drug of choice. I spoke about becoming like a child, curious like a child, becoming imaginative like a child, becoming excited like a child, energy. So these are the things that we need to stimulate in order for us to get that preparation. When I was working with one man, he used to say to me, you need to switch on. So if we want our memory to work well, we need to switch on. Oftentimes we walk around in this sluggish sort of space, who knows what I'm talking about, rather than just switching on. And we can actually switch on our mind. It can become a habit to actually switch on, concentrate, to think. Okay. Also, diet can have a factor in other things in our life. If there's stresses in your life, too much pressure at work, this all can all have an impact on you. But preparation is key. And there's things that we can do to reduce stress. One of my favourite ones is jumping into a freezing cold pool. What it does, it resets the autonomic nervous system. They're sympathetic and parasympathetic, and what that does is reduce stress. It brings you back from a high stress down to what's called homeostasis, so that you can then be more stress-free. So I use that every day. That's a daily trick that I do. But preparation is number one. The next part is the installation. And on the video I spoke about many things regarding installation. And with installation, what we need to do with installation is we can use our imagination, we can use visualization techniques, we can link that information that we want to learn to a song. Who's done that before? You think of a song and it brings back a memory? Or, yeah, you've... Not on purpose, but and sometimes they're bad memories, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But songs, if you listen to a certain song after you had a breakup from a lover, every time you hear that song you might have a meltdown. Those types of things. But we've also got really happy memories from songs. And so our mind works best if we link it to something else. And the more we can link our memory to something. And so when we're doing installation, what we practice is linking. We're going to talk about that today. We'll be using something called the memory palace. And we're using another technique called memory pegs. And the whole purpose of these is to link that thing that we want to remember to something else. And when we link it together and mash it together, and we can do it in a bizarre or unusual or graphical way, we can use movement, we can use lots of colour, we can make things really big. And the more we do that, the more our memory grabs hold of it. And installation, like you're talking about sometimes as shallow installation, we get that installation nice and deep so that we can recall and pull that back into our working memory so that we can then utilise the information. The truth is that everything you've ever heard, everything you've ever done is stored somewhere in your mind. But it's very difficult then to get it out. So the third step is what? What's the third step?
Recall.
Is recall. Recall. And the way that we recall something is, if we've installed it correctly, it's easy to recall it. If we've installed it correctly. If we've taken the time, if we've repeated the information quite a few times. Repetition, as we know, is the mother of all skill. So if we repeat the information, we install it correctly, recall is easy. What about, however, in times that we haven't? Let's say you've heard some information, you've only heard it once, you didn't concentrate on it, you didn't think about it. You know it's in there, but how do you recall it? Well, sometimes if it's a person's name, and say this woman's name starts with K, like Kathleen would, you might think of the letter, well, what is it? Is it letter A, B, C? And you might go through the alphabet until you get to the letter K. Okay, it starts with K. What's the second letter? A, B, C. You may get a feeling in your body as to what the second letter is, or it may come as a flash of insight. Okay, so that's one way to do it. The other way that we can do it is if it's a memory or a situation, like you're talking, Nick, about there's a funny story in your past and you'd like to be able to share those stories. Well, if you can remember what happened before and after, let's say you can't remember the story exactly, but you remember before the story and after the story, sometimes you can work out more to do with the memory by thinking about, well, where was I? Where was I spatially located? Was I at home? Was I at a park? What was I doing that day? Was I working? Had I finished work? By thinking about what came before and what came after can help us work out the middle. Like, who's ever lost their wallet or keys? All of us, right? We all have. And these are things that we do. We put them down and we did it without actually taking the time to install where they were. We didn't take that 2 or 3 seconds, and I'll show you some skills today that we can do that. We can install that information so that then when we move on and we think, oh, where did I put my keys or wallet? Now, it's easy if you put it in the same place every day. We know that. Repetition of behaviour. But it's that one time you're at a friend's house or you're visiting somewhere and you put it down somewhere foreign, somewhere else, that's the time you won't remember. Or you came home and you had 10,000 things on your mind. You had all these things you had to get done and you just put it down somewhere and you'd forgotten where you put it because you didn't pay attention. And so all of this, everything here comes back to one concept, and that is pay attention. No one has a poor memory. Who thinks they've got a poor memory? No one does. It's true. The truth is nobody has a poor memory. We may have a poorly trained memory, but nobody has a poor memory.